Welcome to another episode of Omnipotent Growth with Kal. Today our topic is focused around what is the connection between entrepreneurship and the academic world. We have a very interesting guest, Dimo Dimov. He is a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at the School of Management. This is University of Bath in UK. He's also founding editor-in-chief of Journal of Business Venturing Insights and has been recognized as one of the top 100 professors of entrepreneurship worldwide. So Dimo holds a PhD, a London Business School, and has been in faculties like Newcastle University, University of Connecticut, IE Business School, and also Reykjavik University. He's a co-founder of Kinetic Thinking, a company that enables new styles of thinking, very interesting, also new styles of management and leading, something that we are going to be very interested in today. A very curious concept that Dimo will explain more, we hope. He's also a non-executive director of Breview, I hope that I pronounced that right, a startup that connects funders and those looking for funding in the voluntary sector. Before entering the academic world, he was a finance director with Marriott International, overseeing 2 hospitality businesses in Budapest, Hungary. So a lot of portfolio for our guest today. Steph, could you please shoot the first question?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Kal. And Dimo, it's nice to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. My first question will be because as you know, I'm a banking professional, so I'm very curious. How did you decide to quit the more traditional finance and hospitality business and pursue a career in the academic sector?
First of all, good morning, Stephen. Kal, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your show. Well, the short answer is, there is a short answer, and the question of how. I got an email when I was sitting in my office as a finance director, received an email from London Business School that they were starting a new PhD program in entrepreneurship. And this was, the year was 99. So if you think this was pre the dot-com boom, and so there was a lot of talk about entrepreneurship was starting out. And so I was very curious. And the deadline was a week later, and so I just gathered quickly my documents and I just put my name in the hat. And then before I knew, I was accepted with a full scholarship. And so then the question was, this was an entirely new thing. I never knew I was going to become an academic. I just thought this was a PhD in entrepreneurship, and there are various ways in which you could take things. But I think the bottom line was that I didn't want to go through the rest of my life thinking what would have been if I had taken that chance. So I knew the way the career was lined up in the hospitality and the hotel business. I knew what was coming, and the path was pre-charted. But this idea of not wanting to think about missed chances is probably what led to that. So it was quite exciting, moving to London and all that. So this was the immediate, and the bottom of that, I guess I like learning new things. And if I go in the business and go through the cycle once or twice, you go through the annual cycle and things become repetitive, and then you want to do something new. So this was an interesting opportunity. And by the way, just as an anecdote, when I did my MBA at Case Western Reserve University and the what is now the Central European University Graduate School of Business, Case Western is a school in Cleveland in the U.S. We did at the start, we did a management career values exercise where you learn about yourself and what you're trying to do. And as part of that, I did a learning style inventory, which tells you about you and your careers. And even though I wanted to be an executive and a CEO, my profile said first profession, college professor. So I was very upset about that at the time, and I thought I wanted to be in the other quadrant, but here I am.
Yes, very interesting. But in the end, you somehow managed to combine both worlds. Like you are always part of something. You told us when we had classes, because this is an extra information that Dimo was our professor in our MBA with Stefan. You had so many stories on different entrepreneurial projects that you managed to be around, again, the business. Of course, the scaled business is different, but it still holds the same amount of responsibility, how you are going to move from quarter to quarter, or how you're going to finish the year and so on. So can you tell us now a bit more about kinetic thinking and what is the concept? This is one of the things that you're part of. It will be very interesting for us.
So kinetic thinking is a framework. So this is something that I've developed with a colleague, Professor Joseph Pistrui from the IE Business School. So when I started my first academic job at IE, I started working with Joseph back then, and then I left IE and went to the US, back to the UK after a while, but we reconnected about 2.5 years ago. And this is something that captures our experience in researching, teaching, and thinking about entrepreneurship. So we came together, we kind of compared notes, and we realized that we had a very similar worldview on what was important when it comes to the entrepreneurial journey. And I had come from this from more of a conceptual and research side, trying to make academic inroads into the study of entrepreneurship. He has a lot of experience with working with executives and executive development in the teaching of entrepreneurship at different levels and in different settings. And as I said, it was very consistent. And there were two things, and these two things that are actually captured in the name. One is kinetic, which is connected to movement. So everything is in movement. So in a way, to go through life, there's a movement around you, but you're also moving as well. So there's this sense of always responding of what is outside of you. So that's the idea of kinetic. You cannot be static. You have to have movement. And the second one is about thinking, and thinking is it's a central human thing. It's probably our most fundamental human capacity. And in a way, thinking governs everything that we see and do. And one of the challenges is that thinking is so much in the background that we don't realize that it's there. That when we talk about what we see and when we do things, it's always filtered through the way we think. And the ability to be a bit more reflective and to kind of look at ourselves from the outside and try to take control of the way we think, if I use that expression, that enables us to take control of what we see and what we do at the time. So we have this, the world is always in movement, and we can be a little bit more deliberate and systematic in how to respond. So kinetic thinking is about, we shape the world as thinking, but also as thinkers, but also the world shapes us. So this is this relationship, what we call a recursive model. We do things, the world responds, we do things again, and we reevaluate. So it's always it's a cycle. Yeah. That's the framework, and the bottom line of it is we've taken out of it. We've developed instruments for people to take stock of the way they think and suggest different ways in which they can develop their thinking, to deploy and use a broad range of thinking that comes useful in different situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw on the side of kinetic thinking. That people are entrenched in their own ways of thinking, and you're trying to somehow break it and show them that they should be reflective and so on. So very interesting concept. You also first of all, you prepare an assessment of the thinking. You have assessment of management styles and leadership styles. Core question is how your framework could help the leaders, the managers, to become better versions of themselves.
So the starting point is, as you said, that we develop habits. We have habits of thinking. And so a very simple example, you go through school, for example, you're good at maths and you always do maths and you kind of ignore other areas because that's your specialization. Later on, you begin to work with spreadsheets, then naturally go into a career in finance because it involves numbers. So you always you always play to your strength, and you come to a point where you work in an environment, and because you've always emphasized numbers and working with numbers and having a finance point of view, that's the way you see the world. But there's other ways to see the world, which by way of specializing and pursuing a specialization, you're necessarily ignorant of. So there's this idea that to be a specialist in anything means that you're ignorant of other things. So to know anything is to be ignorant of other things. So knowledge and ignorance are actually different sides of the same coin. So if we think about our life stories and what we study and where we work and the functions and everything, the different language and thinking and the sense of what's important that's associated with our life journey creates habits. These are habits of thought, and we never think about kind of breaking away from those habits. And just like, you go to work and you always take the same path and never think about it. You always just follow the same path day after day. And until the time comes where being reflective is you realize, well, wait a minute, this is not the only path that I can take forward. I can actually follow different directions, and one day I can go and take a different route, and that would lead to some interesting thing. It's the same with thinking. So thinking is a habit, is a little groove that you just go day by day. And the beauty of habits is that we don't have to think about things, right? You just do. But what our framework does is allows you to take a look and say, look, this is where you are on a broad map of thinking. This is where you are, but these are all these other areas where you could be. These are all different ways in which you could be thinking in various situations. So we call this a combination of a mirror and a map. So metaphorically, we allow you to look at yourself in the mirror, and behind you see a little map of all the places where you could go, and all of a sudden this opens up developmental opportunities. So it's kind of waking up to realize that these are my habits, but this is not the only way in which things could be done.
Yeah.
Right. I totally love the idea of reflection, some sort of a guideline to your own perception on where you stand, and then a reflection of actually where you stand. And I always think about the skill sets that we have and the choices that we make in our lives, how, as you said, to what extent to be ignorant and to what extent to be curious about a certain topic. And I can always put myself in a state in which I tell myself, what got you here won't get you there. And if you want to do something more, you have to reach for something more, or expand, or explore a different path and try something new. Okay, so this is quite a topic. I think it calls for a whole episode, but as we got you here, we want to be as broad as possible. So I'm going to shift the topic a bit and talk about your book, The Reflective Entrepreneur. And then you write that the entrepreneurial opportunities are clear and obvious in retrospect, but opaque and ambiguous in prospect. So this is something that we really hold on to with Stefan from our class. And the question will be, even so, is there a way, is there a framework in which a seasoned entrepreneur can find, recognize a pattern or recognize a set of things that can lead to the next big thing? And if there is one, what is it? Like how we can define such thing?
So I'll give you an interest. I'll give you the direct answer. The direct answer is no. And of course, this is not what people want to hear. And you're gonna see people who come out and say that they have a framework, and they will say yes. But I'll give you a no, and I'll give you a slightly different but a very intuitive answer, I think. So if there was a way to know, if there was a framework like this, then there would not be a next big thing. Because if there is a way to know, then everybody would get on the bandwagon. You would price it up, and it would eliminate the whole thing that the next big thing represents. So the idea of a next big thing arises from the fact that we just cannot know. That there are things that are going to happen that are currently completely outside of our field of knowledge, of our field of vision, anything else. So there is a sense in which not everything will succeed, right? So this is not everything. We can try many things. Not everything will succeed, but success can come from anywhere. And so if you try and work with that and think, what do I do here? Then the distinct approach is that one, we have to try many things. So we have to experiment and we have to build on the momentum and things that work. So you start with expert entrepreneurs or expert investors. And the thing is that they never bet on one thing. They would bet on a range of things. And out of that range of things, some of the things could work. But you could never pinpoint it. If you're pressed against the wall and you say you got to choose one thing, then that would be an impossible thing to do. A bit like predicting who's going to win the World Cup. Mm-hmm. In fact, with the World Cup, it's going to be one of 32 teams. Yeah, so it's very clear. Yeah. but you don't know which one. And with every stage of the tournament, this gets narrowed down. And even until the very final, it's still down to 2 teams, and you can still not pinpoint it, which one it is going to be. So the idea here is that you always work with a range of things. And the idea of portfolio is an old one. This works at all levels. And institutional investors diversify, they invest in different things. Venture capital funds diversify, they invest in different companies. And even entrepreneurs diversify in the sense that they pursue different ventures over time. And some of these work out and others don't. And sometimes, I suppose if you're lucky, it will be your first time is going to be the big success or relatively successful. If you're less so, it's going to be maybe the 5th or the 6th. But diversification at the level of the entrepreneur is about trying things over and over and different things and learning as you go along.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So you touched upon some of the common qualitative qualities that entrepreneurs have, like persistence, keep trying and trying until the 5th attempt or the 6th or whatever finally gets you to a success. Are things like motivation, hard work, of course, but these are common traits of entrepreneurs and good managers alike. In this regard, what qualities do you think make a good leader?
All right, that's a great question. Let me just step back and just a quick comment on the persistence. So persistence is important, but persistence needs to go with learning. So it's not about trying the same things over again, but always trying. There's a great expression that I like. Is by John Doerr. He's a partner at Kleiner Perkins, a venture capital firm, and he says that the important thing is that never to make the same mistakes. So you always need to be making new mistakes. That's the idea is that mistakes, you never avoid making mistakes, right? Mistakes are always there, but the point is to making new mistakes. So you have persistence, but as long as you're making new mistakes, this is what matters. So that's the idea there. So back to a leader. So a leader, I think the idea larger group of people. So you have an entire organization that you have. So there are people at the front line who do things. The managers, obviously, who coordinate the efforts and organize work. But the leader is there with a slightly different roles. So the leader needs to set a context for other people to try. And part of the context, part of what is important is about inspiring and energizing people so they want to be part of that organization and contributing. So inspiration and energy is so motivating others. But at the same time, you also need to create an environment where there's a sense of discipline and some accountability for performance, because we need to, at the end of the day, we have to achieve things, and every organization has short-term goals to pursue. But the two need to be balanced. So you need to have the inspiration and the context setting and the values, but you also need to have the discipline and the performance. And the whole idea of balance is interesting because it's not about one or the other, or it's about both. I don't know if you've ever, this will take me back to my childhood, but if you've ever been on a horse cart where you drive the horse cart and you have the reins of the horse or the donkey or whatever is driving the cart, you have to keep a balance. You can't pull one or you can't pull the other too hard, because because it can lead to disaster. So this takes me to the time spent with my grandfather some years ago. So it's about a balance, and in a way, the leader has to span this nice boundary between order and disorder. Order is in one discipline, but disorder, you want to let people pursue some of the things that they find that they're important. You want to create that, and nature operates at this boundary between order and disorder. So just to elaborate very, very quickly, so we have within our kinetic thinking framework, we have the idea of a leading style, which is about how to think about yourself when you're trying to lead an entrepreneurial organization. And what we talk about there is two levers, two things that a leader has at their disposal. A leader sets horizons. This is where a leader wants people to be looking. At the same time, leader sets boundaries. And this kind of a sense of who are we and us and them. Where do you drive the boundary between us and them? So horizon is about whether you focus on the present or the future. And the boundary is about how do you deal with the community. Do you think the community is something with whom you transact in a very transactional sense, or you think about co-creation and collaboration, where obviously value can arise out of the current boundaries of the organization. This combination of these two levers can create different leadership styles, and again they can be more or less important in different stages and different periods in the development of the organization. Again, about balance and about doing different things in different situations.
Absolutely. So I totally relate to the balance. It's always the main thing that I try to explain, that this dichotomy, this way of being able to support your team the most, but then challenge them the most, being able to give them opportunity to develop and try new things and to think out of the box, but then setting the boundaries and the frame that you can do so. So you explained very well what types of leadership qualities and thinking a leader must have to be in an entrepreneurial, for example, organization. But is it fixed for you? For example, if a leader has a certain, let's say, it has a certain profile in your framework, and then it turns out that the organization needs a bit more of something else. Is it plastic for you, and is it possible to grow out of a certain pattern, a certain type of leadership? And this is our underlying question. Is there a recipe of leadership growth for you, like development for leaders, reaching from one point to another?
So again, a great question. The short answer is yes. So that's what the whole idea of style represents. A style is a way in which you are set now, but it's something that can certainly change. So we don't look at any of the instruments and any of the concepts that we have. It's not about describing the way someone is in a fixed way, but it's about describing them as a way where they could change. So that's possible. Just like someone can change their hairstyle and dressing style, or a music style. They can change their leadership style. But this is about being reflective and getting a sense of this is where I am, and this is what got me here. To use your phrase, I love that phrase from. This is what got me here, but it's not going to get me there because we're going in a different. So that sense of reflection says, well, I need to be doing things differently, and I need to be thinking differently. And this is what our framework kind of gives you a little map that suggests, well, here are the directions in which you could develop that. So I think there is a message of hope there that personal development, this is possible to change and develop. It's not easy. It takes it takes work to break habits, but at the same time, it is possible. So personal growth for me, this is always about curiosity and learning and trying new things. And there's this sense that there's always a next. No matter where you are, there's always a next. So And in a way, this is about someone and people not taking themselves too seriously, to think that I've achieved now things, so I can stop and I can just rest on my laurels and enjoy things. And I think the moment someone start taking themselves too seriously, this is where kind of development ends. Yeah. So there's always the next, and that's I mean, it's an intimidating thought, which means that you always have to keep going, but at the same time it's quite exciting, because there's always new things to explore and new things to learn.
Growth mindset at its finest.
Yeah,
great.
That's what gathered us here to me and Kal with this podcast. Especially for me, this is something completely new, as you can tell from my appearance. But anyway, to our last but not least question. You're a very busy person. You teach at several universities. So how do you manage your non-executive? You are engaged with kinetic thinking, with Breview, and so on. You're also a father. How do you manage all of your roles, and how do you cope with stress?
That's another great question. I'm not sure that I'm coping well. I mean, I'm obviously managing through. Yes, there are quite a lot of roles. So I know there is a sense of a need to unwind. Yeah. And to unwind is in sometimes there's a value in doing nothing, and the value or something that has nothing to do with work. So that's really it's a very hard thing to do, because sometimes there is a sense that if I'm not working or if not spending my time on what I would consider a productive activity, that there's somehow this is being wasted. But this ability to recognize the value of doing nothing, or the value of doing something that's completely different, is quite important. Now, this could be reading, and reading not necessarily business related or research related, reading something completely different. Perhaps reading a book that you wouldn't normally read, or listening to music, or cooking, or playing. And so that's important. And I've probably learned the hard way that work never ends.
No.
And that's just I have this illusion that if I clear up my inbox, that somehow I can sit back and relax. And this happens. I often clear it up, and there's this great sense of relief, and I can sit back and relax. And then before you know it, it fills up again in no time. Within a couple of days, it fills up again. So as soon as you realize that work would never let go, then taking control of things just means that at some point you just have to say, well, I'm just going to focus on other things, and that's not going to be work related. So it's a hard thing to do. I'm still working on that, but that's that's the way to do it.
Never-ending process. Okay, so yeah, I totally can remember now. My grandfather used to say he was a special man. He had his own way of his own internal equilibrium, let's say, and he used to say, work will be there long after you. So don't beat yourself up with too much work. So yeah, basically the conversation was great, Dimo. We want to thank you for participating, and it will be a pleasure to talk again in the future. We always learn new stuff from you. Then we have plenty of things that we discussed in this episode, so we are going to post some links into the descriptions. You can see the kinetic thinking, the models, and so on. We will post the site. To close up, very important, we can think of leadership in almost any situation which relates to personal life, family life, your work, even if it's a startup with 3 guys and a large company with 2,000 guys. It's totally dependent on the scale. But the things that we continuously find out is that people that achieve more find ways to look from different perspectives, and this is what we again reassured today. So Thank you all for watching. See you in our next episode. And I want to thank again Dimo for participating. See you next week, guys.